There's an idea of Europe that lives rent-free in the American imagination. Cobblestone streets and outdoor cafes, universal healthcare and 6 weeks of vacation, work-life balance and walkable cities, trains that actually go cool places, people who are somehow thinner and more stylish and less stressed despite working fewer hours. A whole continent that figured out how to live well in a way that America never quite managed. And look, some of it's real. Parts of it are legitimately true. But some of it is a fantasy built on 2 week vacations, Instagram aesthetics, and a comparison that flatters Europe because Americans are comparing it to the worst of America rather than to reality as it actually exists. Today we are going myth by myth, what Europe actually gets right, what it does not, and why the picture is so much more complicated than the one your algorithm keeps showing you. Myth 1. The healthcare is free and amazing. This is the big one, the one that ends every conversation about America. And here's what is true. Most American countries have universal health care. You will not go bankrupt from a medical bill. You will not be denied coverage because of a pre-existing condition. The baseline protection is real and it matters, and it is better than what millions of Americans have access to. But here is what the myth leaves out. Wait times. In the UK's National Health Service, the median wait for a specialist referral is months. As of recent years, millions of people are waiting over a year for elective procedures. People with serious conditions sometimes wait weeks just to see a GP. The system is under enormous strain, perpetually underfunded, and the staff are burned out in ways that make American hospital workers look rested by comparison. In countries like France and Germany, the system works better, but it's not free. Workers pay significant payroll taxes. There are co-pays, there's a parallel private system that the wealthy use to skip the queue, which tells you something about how the public system actually feels from the inside. Europe has universal healthcare, that's true, and it's an achievement. It's not, however, a system without trade-offs, without stress, or without failure. The myth is not that it exists, the myth is that it works perfectly. Myth 2. The work-life balance is paradise. Europeans work less. This is also true. France has a 35-hour work week. Germany has robust labor protections. Most European workers get a minimum of 4 to 6 weeks of paid vacation. Maternity and paternity leave is genuinely generous in most of Northern and Western Europe. So what's the myth? The myth is that all of Europe works this way. It doesn't. Working hours in Eastern and Southern Europe look very different. In Greece, workers log some of the longest hours in the entire EU, longer than Americans on average. In Romania, in Bulgaria, in Portugal, the labor protections exist on paper in ways that do not always translate to lived reality. The gig economy is growing. 0-hour contracts are spreading. The Nordic model, which is what people are actually picturing when they say European work-life balance, is not what most Europeans are actually experiencing. And even in Germany and France, the 35-hour week and the 6 weeks of vacation exist within an economy where wages in many sectors are significantly lower than their American equivalents. A software engineer in Germany earns considerably less than one in San Francisco. The time is there, the financial ceiling is lower. You are trading some income for some leisure. That may be an excellent trade. It is a trade, though, not a free lunch. Myth 3. Europe is more racially progressive. This one is uncomfortable, but it matters. The American conversation about race is loud and visible and often painful. Europeans observe it from a distance and sometimes feel superior. America has a very specific and documented racial history that shapes everything about its present, and Europe's cities, with their diverse neighborhoods and their cosmopolitan self-image, can seem from the outside like a more tolerant place. They are not necessarily more tolerant. They are sometimes just quieter. Afro-European communities across the continent face significant discrimination in housing, employment, and policing. The treatment of Roma people across Central and Eastern Europe is one of the most under-discussed civil rights crises in the Western world. France banned headscarves in schools. The UK has its own deeply documented history of institutional racism, from the Windrush scandal to consistent disparities in housing and criminal justice. Germany is grappling with the rise of far-right politics in a way that has real and daily consequences for people of color living there. The myth is not that European racism does not exist. It is that because Europeans do not talk about it in the loud American way, it just must not be there. It is there. It often just has better PR. Myth 4. The cities are walkable and the transit is world class. For major cities in Western Europe, yes, largely true. Paris, Amsterdam, Berlin, Barcelona, these are excellent cities to navigate without a car. The transit infrastructure is real, the density that makes walking useful is real. But Europe is not only its capital cities. Outside of major urban centers, Europe has the same sprawl problem, the same car dependency, the same regional transit deserts that frustrate anyone who does not live in the 5 or 6 most celebrated cities on the continent. Try getting from a small town in rural France to a neighboring village without a car. Try navigating regional Germany or rural Spain or most of Italy south of Rome without something to drive. The train network that people romanticize, the high-speed rail between major cities, is wonderful and better than what the United States has, but it's more expensive. A last-minute Eurostar from London to Paris can run €300 or more. Intra-European budget travel is often on low-cost airlines that make Ryanair feel like an experience. The trains between major cities are great. The transit for everyone else is more complicated. Myth 5. The cost of living is lower and life is more affordable. This is the myth that surprises people the most when they actually move. There are parts of Europe that are affordable, Eastern Europe especially, Romania, Bulgaria, Albania, parts of Poland. If you're visiting a Western salary while living in Bucharest, you'll feel rich in a way that is hard to explain to people who have not experienced it. But the Europe that people are romanticizing, London, Paris, Amsterdam, Zurich, Copenhagen, these are some of the most expensive cities on earth. London housing costs are comparable to New York. Copenhagen has one of the highest costs of living in the world. Amsterdam rents have risen so dramatically in recent years that locals are being pushed out of the city they grew up in. Switzerland is famously beautiful and famously unaffordable. And here's the quiet part that the myth never mentions. The high taxes that fund all of the things Europeans correctly brag about, healthcare, parental leave, public transit, universities, those taxes come from somewhere. A VAT of 20% or more on almost everything you buy, income taxes that in many countries start significantly higher than what American workers pay at equivalent incomes. These things are not free. They're collectively funded, which is a different and arguably better arrangement, but it's not free. Myth 6. European cities are safer. This is true for violent crime. European cities have lower rates of gun violence, lower rates of homicide, and in many cases, lower rates of property crime than comparable American cities. But not uniformly. Pickpocketing in Paris, Barcelona, and Rome is endemic in tourist areas. Parts of Brussels and Marseille have their own significant safety challenges. The migration and housing crises in several European cities have created tension and in some cases crime that local governments have struggled to address. And the definition of safety is complicated by the same surveillance infrastructure that makes London one of the most camera-covered cities on the planet, a trade-off that not everyone would consider progress. So where does this leave us? Europe has done things right that America has not. The baseline social contract, healthcare, parental leave, labor protections, public investment in cities. This represents genuine achievements that real people benefit from every single day. This is not a small thing. For millions of people, it's a life-changing difference. But Europe is not a fantasy. It's a continent of 44 countries and 450 million people with its own bureaucracies and its own failures and its own version of racism and its own inequality and its own exhausted workers and its own unaffordable cities and its own populations that feel left behind by the system that was supposed to protect them. The Americans who moved to Lisbon and fell in love with the light and the pastéis de nata are not wrong. It's beautiful. The Brits who went to Barcelona and never came back are not wrong either. But the version of Europe that lives in the American imagination, the one where everything works and everyone is healthy and life is slower and better and nobody is stressed, that version is a 2-week vacation that never ended. It is a highlight reel. It is Instagram. It's what you see when you're a visitor in a place that has decided to show you its best self. The reality is better than America in some ways and worse in others, and in a lot of ways it's just different, which is, if you think about it, exactly what you would expect from a continent that is not a myth. Drop a comment and tell me what surprised you the most about Europe. If you visited, lived there, or grew up there, I want to know. And subscribe if you want more videos that try to show the full picture instead of just the pretty part. Thanks for watching.